All right, so today we're going to talk about how to lay out your cutouts on your lantern. So you're going to take your template that you made for the shape that you're going to come out. I'm going to do a combination of horizontal rectangles as well as vertical rectangles. So how do I decide how to space it out? Well, first of all, you want to start out with your piece. My piece right now is definitely just still kind of in the wet stage, not quite leather hard at all. It's quite moist. If you're going to do a shape that's like a circle, highly recommend that you just get a lid or something circular and just trace that and lay it out where you want it to go by gently pressing. You can see that I've made like a little bit of a mark, but if I were going to use circles, I'd want to just lay it out gently. Okay, you can see I've made a little mark there. You'd want to lay it out everywhere that you're going to do it, and then you would commit to cutting it with a tool like this one. You could also use a needle tool or an actual knife from your kitchen or an X-Acto blade if you don't mind it getting a little rusty. Okay, so any tool like that. I'm not doing circles though, so I'm gonna rub that out. So I'm just holding my hand there. And this is what you do if you made your template anywhere that you just didn't want it to show up. You do that. You can take a rib tool, which is what I've got here. And if your mark is still showing up, you can hold your hand opposite and just use the rib tool. All right, so to start off, I want to kind of think about if I were cutting this like I would cut a pie or a pizza or a cake, starting from the top for how I'm going to do it. All right, so now that I have a top view, I want to think about this like a pizza, like I was saying. You can use any tool that you've got at your disposal. A ruler could come in handy. You could honestly use like a paintbrush or whatever you'd want to make a mark somewhere and then just glide straight across from it and make yourself another mark. And then do it again, trying to make your pizza evenly cut. If you grew up with siblings, you're probably really good at this because the rule in my home growing up was whoever cuts picks last. So you'd really make sure that everything was even if you were going to get the last piece of pizza. Okay, so I'm once again coming across trying to split that difference. Okay, so now that I've got this as my top view, I'm going to be able to wipe this out later, but this is going to enable me to determine how many windows will fit in a given segment going around. I could keep going from here and split each one of these in half, which I think I actually will do, because I think that the number of windows I have is going to be kind of similar to the number here. Okay, so I just went around thinking of it like a pizza, so splitting it in half, then quarters, and then breaking it up by halves through there. All right, so now that I've got my top all divided, I'm gonna trace my little windows from there. So I'm gonna take my little window template, which is just cardboard that I had cut out. You could cut it out into any shape that you want. I'm just keeping it very simple. And then I'd start deciding where I wanted them to go. One of the really important things is going to be how high or low do I want something to be on the side of my piece. And I can actually solve this problem in a very, very general way. So if I want to make sure that my windows are all at the same height, one next to each other, and they don't go up and down a little bit as I work my way around, I'm going to get a sharp tool. It could be a pen, pencil, needle tool, or this little cutting tool that I've got. You're going to anchor your arm on the edge of the table. I'm actually just using my pinky here to go down. If it would help you, you could also stabilize it on like a pencil or another tool. So I'm making myself like a little jig here using my, my pencil. So let's decide where I want this to go. How high and how low is going to be pretty even. So I like it at that height. So I'm gonna just lightly take this tool, and I'm holding it here at this height, and I'm gonna spin my banding wheel and I'm not cutting through, I'm just making a really light line, and you see it goes all the way around. So now when I place my template, it's going to be even all the way around, lined up to the top. I could do the same to the bottom, but as long as I've lined up the top, the bottom will be the same. But yours, you might want to make a thing on the bottom as well. So I'll just show that. Okay, so any two tools, like I'm using a pencil, you could use a ruler, anything you've got on hand. So I'm just lightly tracing that line as well. Oh, and I messed up, but you know what I can do is I can just erase and go again. So I see now that I bumped that. All right, so if you make a mistake, you're just tracing the line, so it's okay to just go again. It's coming in higher again. Okay, I'm gonna have to just redo that one more time. But this time, I think I'm gonna do it with just my hand. All right, now it's better. All right, so I've got my top edge grid kind of set up for myself, and I've got my height and my base. And once again, those are just lightly on the surface. Those are not carving through. So now I'm going to anchor my, my tool and everything based on these top marks. So I'm going to start off with this window being between, dead set between two of my marks. And I'm just lining it up top and bottom like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and come in. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna lay myself out. So I'm gonna lay out where I want this to be around the whole piece before I cut anything. So I'm holding that on there. And I'm just lightly tracing that on. All right, so there's my first mark, and that's gonna be my first window. You want to make sure that you're leaving enough in between all of your windows that there's like clay to hold the piece up. So I'm going to go ahead and center this again in between two marks. So there are two marks here and here, and I centered this window in the middle of that. And now I'm going to do the one next door, which will leave enough space in between them that there will still be a piece there. And the piece in between them is a bit wider than the cutout part. Okay, so I'm once again just holding that there and tracing my edges. And if I make a mistake, I can just smudge it out, which I just did, and just smudge it out and pull the part off. Okay, so there's my second window. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep doing that until I get to the point. So I said I wanted to do vertical ones and also horizontal ones. So for my horizontal ones, I'm going to kind of look at where they would need to fit. And I think that they would pretty neatly fit going this way, but I might end up with kind of an irregular gap. So I think I'm going to make them a little shorter going horizontally so that they fit directly between some of these so that all of the spaces can be about the same size. But you can make your own judgments going around as to how many are going to fit. So I know that I can fit one of these in between each one of these, and I could go all the way around and it would be even and I wouldn't run out of room. If you didn't space it out like this and you didn't base where each one would go off of some sort of measurement that you had made, and you just freehanded it, you might get to the end and you might be like, oh no, there's an irregular space there. That's why we don't cut first. We're just mapping this out. So that's a light line that I've traced, but I'm not going to cut until I've got everything laid out so that I can be sure not to make any mistakes. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and cut it out. All right, so at this stage of my piece being fairly wet and having just freshly been cut out, the most likely issue that's gonna come up is that your walls are gonna wanna like give a little bit more. So just make sure that everything is kind of tucked back in. You can support it on the inside and the outside. And just make sure that nothing's too weak that it might fall. And if you made any errors, this would be the perfect time to slip and score and put something back together. Or if additional support is needed, you could slip and score a little area and add a little clay back there and smooth it over just a little bit. It's always a good idea to hold it on the inside and the outside when you're doing stuff like that, because otherwise you might run into stability issues. All right, so that's gonna take us to the end of cutting it out for now. We're gonna let that set up to leather hard, but we don't wanna rush it, and we don't wanna put our lid on it until it's quite leather hard again. And we also don't really wanna do a whole lot of smoothing at this stage, because that would moisten it to the point of it flopping. So I do have a damp sponge here, but I'm gonna wait to use that until this piece is leather hard. So I'm gonna wait probably like half an hour with this in front of a fan, checking on it every 5 or 10 minutes and rotating it. If I were gonna blow dry it with a hair dryer, I would want to probably only do like 5 minutes and check on it and make sure that it was nice and leather hard, but not getting chalky. You don't want it to start getting chalky before we smooth it, okay? And then we'll do our lid latch.